Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everybody.
We're learning Mishna Shkalim, Parak Zayin, Chapter 7, Mishnah Beis, Mishnah 2. Money that was found in front of the animal merchants. La'oila meiser, they should always be considered that they are meiser money. Now, we're talking about that we're now in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, and there are animal merchants, people selling animals. And there was money found in front of them. And the question is, so what is that money? Is that ordinary money, chulin, ordinary money? Or is it meiser sheni? Is it the money that was used to redeem meiser sheni? Meiser sheni, as we mentioned, is as a second tithing of the new grain in Eretz Yisrael that cannot be eaten outside of Yerushalayim. It's got to be eaten inside Yerushalayim. Or you redeem it onto money and take the money to Yerushalayim and spend it in Yerushalayim. Now, as you know, so we before had a case of, let's say there was one pile of meiser money and one pile of ordinary money, and you found money in between them. Where do we assume that the money came from? But here the case is where you're in Yerushalayim and you found the money in the streets of Yerushalayim, but you found it in front of the animal merchants. So we say in front of the animal merchants, la'olam, always, all year round, meiser. We have to consider that money, that meiser money that was meiser was redeemed onto, and there it's got to be spent in Yerushalayim on food and drink. Why do we make that assumption? So, during Yontif, when people come up to Yerushalayim for Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, so, it's not like when people have meiser money, they go ahead and they make a special trip to Yerushalayim to spend it there. They wait until Yontif. They wait until they have to go up anyway, and that's when they spend it. So when there's an awful lot of people in Yerushalayim on those holidays, and they all have meiser sheni money, there's an assumption that they all have meiser sheni money. The majority of money in Yerushalayim at that time is going to be meiser money. At the same time, though, it's like there's only so much you could spend of your meiser money. Everybody has meiser money. There's only so much you could spend for the amount of time that you're there. It's not you're not there for that long a time. And therefore, the leftover meiser money, people outside of Yerushalayim would leave it for their relatives in Yerushalayim, their friends in Yerushalayim, and for them to spend it during the rest of the year. Now, the mitzvah is the best thing to use the meiser money for. You can easily use it for any food and drink, but the best thing to use it for is for a carbon shlamim. It's for a shlamim sacrifice, where parts of it are given to be eaten, parts of it are burnt on the mizbeach, on the altar, and the meat is eaten by the people who brought the sacrifice and everybody they want to invite. And therefore, when you're talking about the majority of animals bought in Yerushalayim, what were they bought for? They were bought for the shlamim, for carbon shlamim, from meiser sheni money. That's what came out. It came out that most of the animals being sold in Yerushalayim were being sold for shlamim sacrifices with money that's meiser sheni money that meiser sheni was redeemed onto. And therefore, if you find money in front of the animal merchants, the majority of money around the animal merchants is meiser sheni money. And therefore, you have to assume that's the status of the money. So that's if you find money in front of the animal merchants in Yerushalayim. Baharabayas. Let's say you found the money on the Harabayas, what we call the Temple Mount, the mountain upon which the Beis HaMikdash sits. And therefore, and now there is an area where people go, and then they continue going further and further into the area of the Beis HaMikdash. On Harabayas, basically on the Temple Mount, in the area of the Beis HaMikdash, you find money. What status does it have? Is it ordinary money? Is it chulin, ordinary money? Or do we again assume that's meiser sheni money? So the Mishnah says chulin. It's chulin money. It's ordinary money. All right. So, okay, we're not in front of the animal merchants now, so we don't have that. We don't have that factor. We're on the Harabayas, the Temple Mount. Now, what part of the year are we talking about here? What it says, if you find money on the Harabayas chulin, we consider it ordinary money. Are we talking about the rest of the year? Are we talking about Yontif 2? What are we talking about? So the commentary of the Bartanur explains, we are talking about even on Yontif. Even on Yontif, when the majority of money presently in Yerushalayim is Meiser Sheni money, when you find money on the Harabayas, you assume that it's not Meiser Sheni money. Why? Because a whole year round, the money in Yerushalayim is not Meiser Sheni money. So you basically have all year round, you have more money that's not Meiser Sheni money than Meiser Sheni money. And therefore, if I find money in the Harabayas, I say, where did it come from? It comes from the majority. It comes from what there is more of. There is more of money all year round that's not Meiser Sheni, even though presently the more money is Meiser Sheni. So even though now I have more Meiser Sheni around, nonetheless, since a whole year round I have more, I have regular chulin, I have ordinary money around, and I'm on the Harabayas, and the Harabayas has people going there all the time, I assume that the money came from the majority money, which would be the majority of money from a whole year round, and that money is ordinary. So far we have that if you're in front of the animal merchants all year round, most of that money around them and that around them is going to be Meiser Sheni money. So the fact that, and that's all year round. On Harabayas, we go ahead and we look at all year round and we say the majority of money on Harabayas, it comes from ordinary money because most of the money all year round is ordinary money. Now, Yerushalayim, how about on the streets of Yerushalayim? That's where you found the money. It's not on Harabayas. It's not in front of the animal dealers. It's in the streets of Yerushalayim. What's then? And that the Mishna says, B'shas haregel, during the regel, during the holiday, whether it be Pesach, Shavuos, or Sukkot, Meiser. You can assume the money is Meiser. Ubishar kol yabayis hashana chulin. For the rest of the year, you assume that it's chulin. Now this needs explanation. All right. So in Yerushalayim, clearly we say most of the money around is Meiser Sheni money. But we just said by the Temple Mount, by the Harabayas, you've got to take the whole year into account, not just the present season. And a whole year in the streets of Yerushalayim, what's the majority of money? Not in front, and we're not talking about in front of the merchants. What's in the streets? What's the majority of money that's in Yerushalayim? Chulin, ordinary money. How come we don't follow the fact that all year round, the majority of the all year round money? Why are we only focusing on the fact that now during Yontif, most of the money is Meiser Sheni? The answer is because Yerushalayim was kept very clean. Very clean. They swept the streets of Yerushalayim every day. So therefore, the assumption is the money that fell yesterday has already been swept up. And therefore, I'm not going to consider the money from all year round because that money's gone. I can only consider the present money. And the present money is, the majority of the present money is Meiser Sheni. Bashar kol yabayis hashana. All right, so that's b'shas haregel. Bashar kol yabayis hashana, but then during the rest of the year, chulin, because if it's not Yontif, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the money there? The majority of the money present in Yerushalayim, not during the Yom Tov, not during the holidays, is regular money. So when it's not Yontif, I assume it's regular money. Now we still have one thing that we have to deal with. Okay, so he said that Yerushalayim, I'm not going to deal with the fact that the majority of the money all year round is ordinary because I sweep the streets every day. Harabayas, we say that we do reckon all year round with the fact, even during Yontif, we reckon with the fact that the majority of money that would be on Harabayas is chulin, is ordinary money. They don't sweep the Harabayas every day. The streets of Yerushalayim they sweep, and the area of the Beis Mikdash they don't. The answer is no, they don't. You know why? Because since it's on a mountain, it's windy, and the wind blows away the dust. So therefore, they don't go sweeping the Harabayas. It doesn't need to be swept like the streets of Yerushalayim. The wind takes care of all the dust. That's number one. Number two is the Mishna Brachas that says that you're not supposed to come onto the Harabayas with your shoes or with dust on your feet. So the issue in Yerushalayim, it's not like, we're dealing with, paper wrap, the issue there was not so much the garbage, it was dust. So they swept it because of dust. But on Harabayas, on the Temple Mount, there was windy there was no issue there of the dust so much. And therefore, it didn't need to be swept every day. And if it wasn't swept every day, then we don't have that factor to say, well, yesterday's money was swept up, because it wasn't necessarily swept up. So in Harabayas, we say that we reckon with the money from all year round. And therefore we say even during Yontif, the money found in Harabayas is going to be Chulin money. But the streets of Yerushalayim, since they're swept every day, so if it's Yontif, you assume that it's Meiser Sheni money. All year round, you assume it's Chulin ordinary money. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.